Hi, it's Jennifer Evans, and we are talking about the negative bias this week and how our perspective really caters to our life and how we see it. And we're going to talk all about this next week. So hit that subscribe button if this is something you are interested in, because we've got a lot of great topics next week that's going into what perceived reality is and how our perspective really does change our relationships. It changes how successful we are, where we are at work, kind of what our career path is. All of it is based on this implicit messaging that takes over our brain in a stress situation. So we're going to talk about the negative bias today. The negative bias is a psychological phenomenon that basically says that our brain will process neutral information as negative before it will ever consider that it is positive. And evolutionarily, this happens because of a survival instinct that we need to know where trouble is in order to survive. And our brain, our wandering mind, if you go back to the mindfulness section of, I don't know what you would call this portion of the YouTubes, because we are following my second part of the key steps to living a happier and healthier life, emotional regulation. And at the beginning of each book and at the beginning of each of these sections that I am doing on YouTube, we look at mindfulness, because mindfulness is the key to wellness. And as a part of that week, we talked a lot about the negative bias and kind of living life of free of judgment. And as a part of that, we saw that evolutionarily speaking, we needed the idea of this wandering mind. The wandering mind is kind of this default mode network that is happening that allows us to kind of scan everything for the threats that it may be so that we have the answer. So if you've ever kind of sat there and anxiously ruminated, that is evolution, baby. That is our survival instinct. And it has created so much success that we find rumination is a valuable tool. And we're like, why do we have to have a discussion about it? I've already spent hours looking at every possible threat, and this is the right way. And then people come in and they're like, well, what about this? And you didn't think about it. And you're like, no, that's not what we're talking about. Default mode network, negative bias. Look it up. That is what you're doing. You are rejecting this new information. You are in a perceived reality that this is the way and this is safe, and it is preventing you from having valued interactions, and you're shutting down. You are going into a sense that you are not safe, and so you're shutting down and rejecting new information. And that is what our negativity will do. And as we get into these negative cycles, we find that we are increasing in our distressing thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. We are finding ourselves in more avoidant or escapist behaviors. We're finding that we're getting small pieces of dopamine that is, enforcing the avoidant tendencies. And then we are gaining a lot of anxiety and more implicit distressing thoughts and feelings. We're devaluing ourselves. We are creating low motivation to do better, and we are finding that we have limited capacity to do better. And so the brain is finding all of this, and it is connecting with it, and it says, you need your survival network. Get that amygdala running, get that limbic system running, get that cortisol, parasympathetic, go, 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 go. That is what it's doing. It is putting you in a survival state. It is pulling from all implicit messaging that does not serve you. I promise you, there's so many implicit messages that you have picked up and you didn't even know how you were doing. And if you knew what you picked up, you'd be like, this is so insane. Have you ever looked at your work from when you were like in preschool? And you're like, what is wrong with me? What does this even say? That is all up here. That is what is going on. You are picking up implicit message from the age in which you inquired on what your mind has determined as a stressor, and therefore it is stuck. It is stuck in there, and trauma is the 5-year-olds of the mind, it's just, they always have jam. You wash their hands and their hands are still sticky and they're touching every stress that you have, and it's entwining and entangling, and that's why it's so complicated, why it's so important to have a licensed professional counselor to be there to help you untangle this. There's no shame in the game. It's just a bunch of mess, a bunch of entangled Christmas lights we're trying to get done and untangled. And how we do that is we ground and we find ourselves in a mindful present. We try to see what is going on and where our emotional reactions are, and how to ground to find an action-oriented state. We're trying to get back to the prefrontal cortex, where our executive functions are, where our action-oriented space is. And from a dopamine perspective, the more we get dopamine no matter what. So get in a positive cycle, and dopamine will be right there to reinforce you, keep more motivation. Positive cycle is where it's at. The negative bias will pull us into these avoidant tendencies, and we continue to find ourselves just cycling in despair. And there's a lot of opportunities. Saying Goodbye to Bad Brain, my book on Amazon, you can get it in the link if you go down to the video description. There's a ton of stories of where people have changed their brain and how they found realization in various aspects of where they were cycling in the negative, and how to find awareness to get them into the positive. A lot of great stories there. I do highly recommend that book. And then what we want to do is, the brain has neuroplasticity, which means we can change it. That's the beauty. That's why there's no shame in the game, because we can change it. All we have to do is have awareness, acceptance, and action, and we can change our fate. And it's not our fate. Honestly, it's not our fate. It is, our fate is, our will is, ultimately as a Christian, to serve God and Jesus Christ. But ultimately, for those who may have other spiritual beliefs, our fate is to trust ourselves enough to put ourselves out there to help others achieve their outcomes, and for us to be out there to allow others in so we can achieve our outcomes. That's kind of the most basic of it, and, kind of allowing all types of mindsets to be able to fall into that broad explanation. And we do that by doing one small thing that neutralizes and keeps us present, and one small thing to go into the positive. We're not doing these massive leaps. We're taking these micro steps. Micro steps will get you everywhere, through atomic habit building, through just finding intention and balance in the things that you do. Saying that you want to do something more, and then just setting a 5-minute timer and getting it done, and just saying, okay, I finally put time towards that. I feel very good about myself. And atomic habits, finding out what you do, finding grace for what you don't do, finding a pattern of what is working for you, and then finding one thing to do to snack on top of that, right? I wake up, I get my coffee, I get my donut, I go to work. I go to work, I get my coffee, I sit down at my computer, I chat with some people, and then I start work, right? These are atomic habits. These are the things we do. So instead of getting the donut, we replace it with a protein shake. Easy peasy. Instead of going and chatting with people, we do a couple of squats while we chat with people, right? Easy peasy. So we're finding what we're doing. We're just shifting things around or adding something to it because we already have a routine there. We're just becoming more mindful of what that routine is. And then we're being aware of the triggers. We're realizing, where do we get triggered and where do we start getting into that negative mindset, so that we can be more intentional around that space and start to make shifts and balances so that we don't fall into the negative cycle. And I have videos on all of these, so go back to the beginning, especially Blame It on the Brain and the negative cycles in the beginning are some really great ones to be able to do this. I also look at atomic habits, so go to that. And the Science of Optimism, really, and we talked about gratitude earlier, is finding that there's value and growth in everything. So don't find shame as your go-to. Don't be in the suffering, despair. Find your value, strength building, and growth to move away from these negative cycles and into the positive, away from the negative and into the positive. And you can do this through cognitive behavioral therapy. Go and schedule a 15-minute free wellness insight with me to learn how you can personally implement this for yourself. We've got a lot of great videos coming up, so hit that like button and hit subscribe. I am Jennifer Evans and look forward to working with you and helping you build a happier and healthier 2025.